Imagine you're a third-year student who's so shy that you hardly have any friends. Until one day, you meet a guy who will change your view of the world, and with him, you'll experience a romance that will last much longer than you can imagine. This is the story of Kotaro, a student at Kawago High School, a member of the literature club, with the dream of becoming a short story author. On the other hand, we also have Akane, one of the members of the athletics club. In April, both of them start their third year of high school. The students gather in the gym, where the principal welcomes them to another school year and to those who are just starting a new stage in their life. After the opening ceremony, Akane feels overwhelmed and suffers an anxiety attack. She seeks refuge in the bathroom, where she squeezes a rubber figure to calm her nerves. Meanwhile, Kotaro stays in the classroom reading a book and reflecting on the inequalities in school and how some clubs are more prestigious than others. The same happens with the students, which shouldn't be the case, but no matter how unfair it is, that's just how things are. Even one of his friends, Roman, turns out to be quite popular with the girls. Akane arrives at the classroom, but hesitates to enter until a classmate recognizes her and welcomes her. Classmates greet her, recognizing her from the athletics club. The class splits into groups. While Akane talks, our protagonist watches her. A spelling mistake on the club poster causes laughter. Instead of joining friends, the protagonist goes to the library to write. Outside, Akane does fitness tests but isn't the best and needs improvement. That day, a spelling mistake on the recruitment poster for the athletics club causes a lot of laughter among the students, and our protagonist, instead of meeting up with her friends, prefers to go to the library, where she sits alone after finishing writing her stories. Outside, Akane is doing her fitness tests for the club, and although everything seems to be going well, it turns out that the young girl isn't the best in the club and has a lot to improve. After classes, Akane gets home, and her family tells her that they will be eating out that night, so they head to a family restaurant. By pure coincidence, Kotaru's family is having dinner at the same restaurant. Even though they recognize each other from school, neither of them dares to talk to the other. The dinner goes on, and both of them feel uncomfortable, which doesn't get any better when their respective parents ask them to go get some drinks from the soda machine. Both of them try to ignore each other, not because there's any bad intention, but because they're just too shy. Since the whole situation is getting a bit awkward, our protagonist gives a nearly imperceptible greeting, and I say nearly because it's Akane's sister who notices and asks where she knows the boy from. Once Akane mentions it, our protagonist's sister tells their parents to start talking to Kotaru's parents because apparently they are friendly people and don't mind interrupting other people's dinner. During the meal, Kotaru's father comments to his son that Akane is very cute, assuming it's so he can ask her out, but his mother tells him that she's too young for that kind of thing. Before leaving, Akane asks Kotaru to keep their meeting a secret. At the restaurant, Kotaru notices that Akane is a member of the athletics team, not because he has any deduction skills, but because the girl's jacket says exactly that. Seeing that they belong to different worlds, Kotaru understands why she preferred that no one knew they knew each other. Time passes, and the two don't talk at school, but they exchange occasional glances. Later, at an informational meeting about the school festival, both of them are responsible for working with the event staff, starting to become more aware of each other, and they create a group chat. That same afternoon, Kotaro drops off his manuscript in a mailbox, as he always sends his writings to different publishers and contests. After that, he heads to buy books at his friend Daisuke's bookstore, who recommends a romantic novel written from a young girl's perspective, lends him a CD, and also gives him a magazine with women on the cover, since he has noticed that our protagonist is starting to reach the age where he becomes more interested in girls. The next day, one of the group members scolds Kotaro for falling behind on his tasks, and asks him to urgently find a marker in the school's storage room. Akane, knowing that it's all her fault since her shyness prevented her from adding the protagonist to the line group, and that's why he's not getting his tasks done, gathers her courage and follows him to the storage room to apologize. There, she explains her situation and asks for his line contact, but he doesn't have his phone in hand, so she gives him a piece of paper with her number written on it. Feeling guilty, Akane decides to help Kotaru with his tasks, even though that means she'll be late for her athletics training. That night, Kotaru joins the group, which makes Akane very happy. Kotaro dreams of being a short story author, so he stays up late writing on his computer, which ends up taking a toll on him the next morning, as he's tired all over. His family knows what he he does at night, and his dad encourages him to keep doing. He loves. Our protagonist thanks him for the advice, although secretly he never lets anyone read his stories. One day, the school is celebrating its annual sports festival. Shinatsu, a classmate of Akane, is super excited and wants to win, but Akane, who is really nervous, calms her nerves by squeezing her little rubber doll, a ritual she does when she feels anxious. Meanwhile, Roman, Kotaru's best friend, keeps insisting that he let him read his novel, but Kotaru flatly refuses, and they change the subject when it's Akane's turn to run, as she's part of the team. Akane does great in her 200 meters race, while the red team, which our protagonists belong to, wins the tug-of-war competition. Kotaru helps by organizing the equipment, as he prefers to stay out of all this, but the rules state that all team members must compete in at least one sporting event, so he has no choice but to run in a race. This doesn't excite his friends either, who have nicknamed him Softy, and he knows he won't be much help in getting the team to win. The guys run the 200-meter race, but it's clear that athletics is not Kotaru's thing. Everyone is impressed by the speed of the athletics club captain, Takumi Hira, who wins effortlessly. Kotaru, on the other hand, falls to the ground and barely manages to finish the race in last place. On his side, Hira wins the race and greets Akane with a smile, which makes the other girls joke around and causes Akane to blush with embarrassment. But if we pay attention, Hira tends to be close to our protagonist as he is clearly interested in her. Kotaru, who injured his hand during the race, receives treatment from Shinatsu in the nurse's office since the nurse wasn't present. Shinatsu talks to our protagonist and cleans his wound, getting a bit too close in the process. Plus, her way of putting on the bandages isn't the best and might have even hurt him more, but Kotaru doesn't complain and leaves feeling grateful. During lunch, Akane's parents congratulate her on her performance. Her dad tells her that the main event is still to come and that he brought the camera to capture her victory, which makes her even more nervous than before. Kotaru approaches Akane and greets her, but the nervous girl is focused on squeezing her stress ball. In one of the classrooms, the festival committee gathers to prepare for the upcoming event, especially the treasure hunt, and Akane doesn't realize that her little stress doll has fallen and mixed in with the sandbag. Later, the protagonist realizes and starts searching for it desperately, without success, in front of a worried Kotaru who notices that something is wrong. The treasure hunt doesn't go as planned, since Akane was in charge of filling the boxes with the papers, but she got distracted looking for her doll. However, Kotaru quickly resolves it, and the competition continues. While Akane feels guilty for failing at her task, her friends ask her what's wrong, and she tells them that she has lost her doll. Kotaru, who overhears this by chance, decides that his new mission is to find the precious doll. Later, in the relay event, Akane accidentally drops her baton, and her team ends up in last place. After the event, Hira cheers up Akane, who was very disappointed. When Akane gets ready to go home, Kotaru finds her stress doll and returns it to her, feeling relieved and happy. Akane tells him that what was bothering her so much was the loss of her doll, not losing the race, since being around people makes her very nervous, but she ignores that because running is her passion. He responds that there's nothing wrong with that and that it's not strange to him at all. That night, Akane talks to Kotaru, thanks him for helping her, and the two have a conversation that lasts all night. He replies that there is nothing wrong with that and that it is not strange to him in the least. That night, Akane talks to Kotaru, thanks him for helping her, and the two have a conversation that lasts all night. The next day, Kotaru decides to share his writings for the first time and receives advice from Daisuke, allowing him to revise his short novel, writing about his encounter with Akane and realizing that, contrary to what he thought, it's possible to influence others with his words. The year keeps moving forward, and it's time for the midterm exams. Akane's friends invite her to take a break after the exams, but she politely tells them that she has activities in the athletics club, so she won't be able to attend. Kotaro, on the other hand, is so distracted that he can't focus on studying and gets lost in his work at the literature club. Actually, our protagonist is anxious, waiting for the results of a literature contest he entered a while ago. That same manuscript he had dropped in the mailbox, Kotaru finds himself at the local temple, where he usually helps out with different activities. He runs into his friend Daisuke, the owner of the bookstore he often visits, and they chat about the stories Kotaru is writing, as well as the fact that our protagonist can't concentrate on his exam. Thinking about what to do, the protagonist gathers his courage and texts Akane, who seems very happy to receive his message. The two talk, and Kotaru is happy to see that they're not just discussing group activities, but also their personal lives and school matters. She thanks him for the nice things he said when he found her doll at the sports festival. This makes Kotaru very happy, and he manages to relax a bit, but studying, that's out of the question. The next day, after finishing the exams, our two protagonists lock eyes, but they still don't dare to speak to each other face to face, let alone in front of their classmates, so they go on with their day accepting things as they are. Shinatsu, on the other hand, isn't as shy as they are and doesn't hesitate to greet Kotaro loudly, which embarrasses the young man, who responds with a quick hello before walking away. This action surprises Kane Einatsu, who tells him that she decided to be friends with Kotaro after hearing him say that he is very nice. During the athletics club training, the girls chat and several of them are already eager to have a boyfriend. Although the main choice is Hina, they all suspect that the guy already likes someone, and no one doubts that it's Akane. Meanwhile, in the school library, our protagonist decides to seek some advice, and since there's a saying that if you have problems, you should open a book at random from your library to a random page, and there you'll find your answer, our protagonist does just that, even though I've never heard anything like that before. The protagonist takes his book, and the phrase he reads tells him that romance shouldn't be left to chance, which confirms his theory because it's not bad advice. Once his club activities are over, Kotaro gets ready to head home when he sees some of his friends confessing their love to their classmates, with discouraging results. He also overhears Shinatsu talking about the relationship between Hina and Akane, since everyone at school believes they should be together and that Hina is after Akane, which we have no doubt about. That night, during dinner, Akane and her family talk about which school she wants to go to and her upcoming athletics team meeting. One option is a school in Tokyo, but for that they would have to transfer Akane's father so she can study in the big city, which isn't too difficult since it seems the family is used to moving. Meanwhile, Shinatsu runs to train and remembers Akane's magnificent performance at the last meet. With admiration, he decides to keep training so that one day he can surpass her. Sometime later, Kotaro is exchanging messages with Akane and feels disappointed because he can't go see her, as he has to be at the shrine on Sunday. He almost gets the courage to ask her if there's someone in her class that she likes, but he changes his mind. The two continue chatting, and our protagonist keeps working on his novel. At the athletics trial on Sunday, Akane is as nervous as ever, and Hina approaches her, telling her that she has noticed her performance. The boy tries to say something to her, but he gets interrupted. Kotaro, on the other hand, prays for Akane's success at the shrine. As the race begins, Kotaro focuses on his temple activities, practicing how to play the drums, but he wonders how Akane did in her competition. Akane sets a new personal record, surrounded by Hina and the rest of her teammates, but she's more interested in her phone than in the others. To make matters worse, the protagonist's phone dies, so she's unable to talk to Kotaro. Our protagonist, on the other hand, is in the same boat, as he can only think about his friend, which distracts him from all his tasks. At the end of the day, the young man laments not being able to talk to Akane and returns home disappointed. But to his surprise, Akane herself arrives at the temple to talk to him. The two awkwardly chat, and she explains that her phone died, but she knew he was at the temple, so she came to meet him to talk. The two sit down to chat shyly, and while looking at the moon, Kotaro remembers Natsume's phrase, "The moon is beautiful, just like you," and the thought of asking Kane out crosses his mind. Gathering his courage, our protagonist asks his friend out on a real date. Days after this proposal, Dyson Middle School organizes a school trip to Kyoto, and all the students from our protagonist's class gather at the train station with their two accompanying teachers, one being a male teacher, and Ryoko Sonoda, a young teacher for whom Roman seems to have romantic feelings. Upon arriving, Kotaro and Akane exchange glances, and it's revealed that the night Kotaro asked her out, she told him she needed time to think about it, so both are in a state of waiting, anxious for Akane's response. Before leaving, the teachers do a luggage check and confiscate the prohibited items from the students, like entertainment magazines and cell phones. Similarly, despite the teachers' efforts, several kids manage to hide their phones among food packages and even in their underwear, so Kotaro quickly retrieves his phone, relieved and waiting for Akane to respond. Once in Kyoto, Akane and Shinatsu visit the local temples, where fate tells Akane that she will have excellent luck, but it makes a curious comment about love. Later, the two visit a souvenir shop next to a famous shrine to pick out gifts for the athletics club, where they run into Kotaro, who is choosing books. Shinatsu chats with Kotaro, who is watching Akane from a distance. When Akane notices him, she walks away, leaving Kotaro worried. he continues talking with Shinatsu, who clearly has romantic intentions towards him. That night, during bedtime, the teachers, including Ryoko, patrol the chalet to make sure all the students are asleep. After Ryoko leaves Akane's room, she and her friends wake up, pull out their phones, and have a girl talk, where they ask Kane if she likes someone. She shyly admits that she does, but since she doesn't reveal the identity of her crush, everyone assumes it's Hina. On the other hand, the boys visit the girl's room. While Kotaro chats with Akane using his phone, he asks her what she's doing the next day during their free time when they can explore on their own, but she tells him she still doesn't know. Our protagonist tries to invite her out to meet with him, but Roman and Daichi snatch his phone, trying to see a message. Kotaro retrieves his phone before they see anything relevant and leaves his room to continue chatting with Akane, inviting her to meet at noon in the shopping district. However, before she can respond, Professor Baron appears behind Kotaro, sees his phone, and confiscates it, leaving Kotaro unaware of what Akane's answer will be. The next day, Akane doesn't see any response from Kotaro while she's with Aira and Miu, wondering what went wrong. She doesn't know that Kotaro's phone was confiscated, so when she asked him about his plans, he never replied, leaving her feeling awkward and unsure of what to do. So Akane spends the whole day with her friends exploring the city, but they aren't great company, so she spends the entire day looking at her phone. Her friends, seeing that our protagonist is lost in thought, decide it's time to explore separately and go their own way. So Akane finally makes up her mind and heads to the agreed place just as it starts to rain. Unfortunately, the district is large, and even though Kotaro goes to meet her, he can't find her, thinking that she didn't show up for the date. Meanwhile, Kotaro searches for Kane without success, but he does run into Shinatsu, so he asks to borrow her phone, but then he realizes he doesn't know the protagonist's number and doesn't have the courage to ask Shinatsu for it, since their semi-romantic friendship is still a secret in the classroom and he doesn't want to reveal it. But the young woman, who has noticed what's been going on for a while, calls Akane and hands the phone to Kotaro, so they arrange to meet at a small shrine under a tree. Akane asks Kotaro why he didn't reply. His phone was taken. She wonders about Shinatsu's phone and their closeness. Akane feels hurt by their silence and wants to know him. Kotaro shyly asks. Akane tells Kotaro it hurts. They don't talk. She wants to know more about him. At school, Kotaro enters, shares a smile with Akane, and sits. A friend asks if something's up. Akane says nothing's happening. Secretly, they've started dating, but if known, all eyes would be on them. Back at school, everything seems to be back to normal. While the classmates are chatting, Kotaro enters the classroom and shares a knowing smile with Akane. He sits down and she continues smiling, which causes one of her friends to ask her if something is wrong. Akane, trying to hide it, answers no. What no one knows is that the two have started dating in secret, because if this were to be known, all eyes would be on them. Knowing that Kotaro is struggling with his grades in the midterm exam, Professor Sonoda calls him to her office and expresses her concern about his studies, giving him some advice on how to improve. Shinatsu, who was outside, accidentally overhears the conversation and feels a bit worried about her friend. When Kotaro steps out, Shinatsu approaches him, saying that she's also having trouble with her studies, hinting that she gets an average score like his. She asks him if he knows of any reading academy that could help her, and he tells her that the one he chose is quite good. Later, during track training, Hina gives Kane, Shinatsu, and Hoi a tough training plan ahead of the track meet. Even though the girls complain, Shinatsu shows enthusiasm and a desire to improve, so Akane agrees to go along with it alongside her friends. During a ritual dance practice at the neighborhood temple, Kotaro asks Daisuke about love and relationships, although he mentions that he's actually just researching for his upcoming novel. Although Kotaro seems to know little about relationships, Akane isn't that different, and also doesn't know how to act in these situations. So that night, while Akane researches dating in high school, her sister walks into the room. Akane asks her sister what dating is like in high school, and her sister, happy to discover that Akane has a boyfriend, warns her not to share it too much, as their mom might react strangely and would have to invite him over for dinner, something Akane doesn't want to do. Kotaro also researches online what to do in a relationship, and while in the real world, the internet would be the worst place to ask this, it turns out to be a pretty useful tool. So the answers are quite reassuring, like holding hands, going for a walk, and even visiting each other's houses. Our protagonist's mother interrupts him and urges him to keep studying, saying that if he keeps getting bad grades, she won't let him be part of the drum parade. Later, the two text each other, regretting that they couldn't talk in person all day and agreeing to meet during lunch in the school library. The next day, Kotaro goes to have lunch in the library. Akane tries to follow him, but she can't think of anything to say to her classmates, so without being able to come up with an excuse, she stays in the classroom. Kotaro finishes his lunch alone and realizes that Akane isn't coming. Just as he's getting ready to leave, Shinatsu walks into the library since he had previously recommended place for studying, and he's happy to see him. Akane finally meets up with Kotaro in the library, only to find that Shinatsu is there with him. When she arrives, Shinatsu just steps back, saying they were talking about academies and organizing to visit a couple. Shinatsu says goodbye, and Kotaro asks Akane if she wants to visit some academies with him, but she cuts him off with a firm no. Later, Akane performs poorly in her athletics training, so Hina takes her to the neighborhood park to encourage her to be more dedicated. Shinatsu, on the other hand, can't fully commit to the athletics club because she needs to focus on her grades, so she asks for permission to skip that night. Shinatsu tells Kotaro that it's very likely she'll attend that academy and asks for his line address while walking home after class. The next day at school, the students chat during lunch and the girls talk about their different relationships, emphasizing how important communication and being together are. Later, a group of students ask Kane if he's dating Hina since they saw them leaving the athletics practice together. She quickly replies no, reassuring the admirers of the young sports star. While he's at Daisuke's bookstore, Kotaro talks to the owner, telling him that his relationship with Akane has some issues since they don't have a place to be together. Daisuke has an idea and suggests something to Kotaro. Later, Akane meets Kotaro at the bookstore to share her intimate feelings and recently revealed personal matters because he can't improve his grades since instead of studying, he only thinks about his novel, and she can't improve her performance in the athletics club. Finally, our protagonist gathers the courage and takes Akane's hand. She takes his hand, so everything is fine. Except that Akane receives a text from Shinatsu saying that she seems to have fallen in love with Kotaro. Akane decides not to tell our protagonist about Shinatsu's message, seeing how she will handle this situation. Meanwhile, Kotaro, who has been feeling like a winner lately, starts to stand out in his practices at the temple because he's in such a good mood. Akane meets up with her friends, getting ready for what's going to be a big athletics meet that weekend. While his father cleans a gun, Kotaro receives a call from the publishing house where he submitted his novel, asking if he wants to meet with them over the weekend. Akane, on the other hand, doesn't have the best family dinner, as Ayame, her older sister, reveals to their parents that she has a boyfriend, which isn't a big deal, but it embarrasses her a lot, and she retreats to her room. The next day, excited, Kotaro meets Akane in the library to share the good news, although he also finds out that as a result, he will miss his athletics meet. But she tells him that's not a problem. They both promise to give it their all, and Kotaro asks Akane what she wanted to talk about, but the protagonist decides to avoid the topic of Shinatsu. That same day, while our protagonist is having his meeting and before the race, Akane confesses to Shinatsu that she's dating Kotaro, and Shinatsu, with a smile, says she already knew from the start. But Akane's mind is elsewhere, so she doesn't do very well. In his meeting with the editor, Kotaro receives a harsh blow. The editor tells him that judging by his writing, he doesn't have the potential to become a novelist, but he could focus on light novels. In Japanese culture, this means that his works would be seen as popular entertainment, which would make them perceived as less serious writing, which is not the goal of our protagonist. Still, he warns him that he doesn't want him to spend the rest of his life chasing an impossible dream, although he acknowledges that Kotaro is young and has time to improve. On the other hand, Akane couldn't focus on her race, achieving her worst personal record and getting disqualified from the tournament. Each of them fails in their respective tests. Akane doesn't make it to the next round, while Kotaru's story gets rejected. Only Shinatsu comes out well from the meeting. After dinner, Akane tells her sister about the message, and her sister suggests that given the situation, it would be best to stop being friends with Shinatsu. But instead of following that advice, Akane decides that the right thing to do is to go talk to her friend. The next day, they both meet in the library and comment that neither of them has achieved their goal, but they promise to keep working so they can fulfill their dream. So, the next day, our protagonist decides to start writing again, and on her part, Akane meets with Shinatsu to talk about the issue. A little more at ease, away from the noise of the sports event, the two young women talk, and Akane apologizes to her friend for keeping the secret, making sure that despite everything, she wants them to remain friends. Shinatsu, with a sigh of relief, agrees, but asks Akane if she can close the matter by confessing to Kotaru. The classmates decide to organize a day of pure fun at Dome City Park to enjoy all the rides. The truth is that Shinatsu was the one who organized the whole trip because her dad had a bunch of tickets, so she decided to invite Kane, Kotaro, and Hina. Roman and his friends overhear the conversation and sign up for the trip too, since they also had tickets. When the other classmates find out about the plans, suddenly the whole classroom turns into a massive trip to the amusement park. Once at the park, the kids organize themselves to get on the roller coaster, and our protagonists are still hiding their relationship, so they can't ask to sit together without raising suspicion. Akane ends up sitting next to Hina, while Shinatsu sits next to Kotaru. In that situation, the drop of the roller coaster is as comfortable as it can be. When they get off the roller coaster, Akane trips and falls to the ground, but Hina helps her up while Kotaru watches with a sour expression. The awkwardness continues in the gift shop when Akane and Hina accidentally buy the same cap. A friend asks Kotaru if he has seen Roman, and they realize that their friend has been missing for a while, so he offers to go look for him. While they search for Roman, our protagonist runs into Shinatsu, who was also looking for him around there. Shinatsu gives Kotaru a photo from the roller coaster, where he looks terribly bored and she has her eyes closed. Our protagonist thanks her for the photo, and she asks him to call her by her name, while insisting that he do the same. Kotaru doesn't dare, especially knowing that Akane is nearby. However, she insists, and he finally agrees, which Akane hears, and even though she doesn't say anything, she gives him a look that says, "We need to talk." Akane tells them that the group is already in line for the next game. Shinatsu goes with her, while Kotaru receives a message from Roman saying that he's in the first aid room. When he arrives, Kotaru finds Roman lying down, who tells him that he just suffered from heat exhaustion. When the nurse leaves and they are alone, Roman tells Kotaru that he knows he and Akane are dating and offers his help to hide and spend some time alone, which is difficult. With Hina, Chinatsu, and the rest of the class hanging around, Kotaro goes to look for Akane, and Shinatsu follows him all around the park. Akane, on the other hand, can't shake off Hina, who is helping her look for a friend, so technically they're spending the whole day together. Kotaro asks about Akane, and the classmates tell him they've seen her with Hina and that they're happy about it since they make a great couple. Seeing that they're surrounded by a lot of people, Hina suggests to Akane that they go somewhere more private, and she follows her. When Kotaro catches up to them, he can't hold back his feelings any longer and tells Hina that he and Akane are dating. Hina processes the information and asks Akane if it's true, to which she responds that it is, and with more confidence. Kotaro takes his girlfriend's hand and they both run off. Shinatsu, who wasn't far away, sees the couple walking away hand in hand, and even though she already knew about their relationship, she breaks down and starts crying. Later, Hina takes it upon herself to tell everyone that Akane and Kotaru are dating, becomes the gossip of the whole classroom. Sitting alone on a bench in the park, Kotaru apologizes to Akane for going too far, but she tells him it's okay. After all, it's the truth. Akane suggests getting together with their friends, but Kotaru wants to spend more time alone, so they go out for lunch while she informs the group that they'll be fine. The rest of the day, the two spend time alone in the park and have more fun than ever. At night, Shinatsu's friends comfort her when they find out she's sad about Akane and Kotaru's relationship. On the other hand, our protagonists watch the fireworks and tell each other that they might come back soon, but alone, and they think it's a great idea. They hold hands and are about to kiss, but a little girl interrupts them. Elsewhere, with the rest of their friends, Shinatsu apologizes to Hina for inviting her, and Hina responds that everything will be fine. On the train ride back home, Akane chats with Shinatsu online, and even though everything is fine, she tells her that in the end, she couldn't confess her love to Kotaru because when she finally made up her mind, she saw them together and it was already too late. Time passes, and at school, everyone already knows that our protagonists are dating, so they can finally breathe a little easier. In the drum club, Kotaru is like a new person, super excited because he can't stop thinking about the moment they almost kissed. One day, he invites her to walk home together, but Akane tells him she can't because she has track club activities. activity. In class, Kotaru's classmates congratulate him, while Akane's friends question her choice. The girls expected Akane to date Hina. They laugh, doubting they'll kiss first. What surprises the girls the most is that they thought Akane would date Hina. Amid laughter, they tell her to let them know when they kiss, although they doubt either of them will be brave enough to make the first move. At the end of the class, everyone goes back to their routine in their respective clubs. After their activities, they meet in the library, grab a bite to eat, and chat about their future plans, especially the upcoming festival. Suddenly, Kotaru gets a message from the drum club asking if he's going to practice, even though he'd rather spend time with his girlfriend. Akane tells him that she wants to go with him to see her practice. At the temple, Akane introduces herself as Kotaru's girlfriend, and everyone is happy to meet her. During the rehearsal, Akane is left speechless when she sees Kotaru dancing. Later, he talks to Daisuke, and Kotaru receives some money from his friends to invite Akane out for drink. The next day, the two meet up, and Akane shows up in a traditional dress, something her mother allowed her to wear when she found out they were going to a festival. Kotaru is amazed. They stroll through the festival talking about food and different products, but Akane gets sad when she realizes that she missed Kotaru's birthday and didn't give him anything. He tells her not to worry since they aren't officially dating yet and that he's used to celebrating alone, but she feels guilty. Akane apologizes to make a call and steps away for a few minutes. Actually, she's out looking for a gift for her boyfriend. First, she sees some phone cases that look a bit strange, but then she finds some dolls that remind her of her stress ball, the one she uses when she's anxious and for which they gave her the nickname Soft Akotaro. Akane returns to her boyfriend, although she still hasn't given him the gift. They continue to enjoy the day and later walk through the temple, where they ask for some lucky charms and leave their wishes at the temple. Finally, Akane gives him the stress doll and Kotaru thanks her from the bottom of his heart. They decide to start calling each other by their names and finally they kiss. The next day at school, when her friends ask Akane why she's in love with Kotaru, this time she has an answer, because even though he's reserved in front of others, he can express his true self with her. Kotaru, on the other hand, is in the library playing with Akane's gift. Days later, at the temple, our protagonist's wishes are hanging in the open air, and they both say that they pray every day to always be together. Applications for high school start coming in, and everyone at school is deciding their futures and careers. Kotaru and Akane are determined to go to the same school, even though they still don't know which one it will be. Because of his grades, Kotaru isn't sure if he can get into the same school as Akane. Additionally, there's a possibility that the protagonist will end up in a private girls' school like her sister. She trusts that at least they'll be in the same district so they can continue seeing each other without any issue. During dinner, each one faces her own perspectives. Akane's father is going to be transferred to Chiba, something they were expecting, and it wasn't a problem after all. It's common for the family to move often due to work. However, this time there's a problem for our protagonist, as for the first time she has a reason to stay. Meanwhile, at Kotaru's house, our protagonist is still thinking about Lady's words, who advises him to stop aiming to be a novel author and focus more on light novels. Still, that's not the main problem, since during dinner, Kotaru's mother pressures him to choose a prestigious school, which is becoming more and more distant unless he starts studying hard to improve his grades. Her father, on the other hand, tells her that there's no need to rush and trusts that she'll make the right decision when the time is right. After drum practice, Kotaru asks Daisuke if he's heard about light novels. His friend replies that he has a bookstore, so yes, he has seen them. Our protagonist asks him if there's any good ones, and Daisuke tells him that they're like any other type of novels. Some are good, others not so much, and it's all a matter of taste. Daisuke asks what the conversation is about, and Kotaru tells him that someone recommended a few to him. Daisuke tells him that he should give them a chance and read a couple before forming an opinion. That night, our protagonists chat online, but neither of them shares the latest news, the move, the lack of prospects, and the possibility of writing light novels. Akane tells him that tomorrow she has her last race, and she asks if he can come to watch her, but she says that it would make her really nervous. Kotaru tells her that in that case he'll miss it and can only support her from a distance. But secretly, Kotaru decides to go to Akane's last athletics competition. He doesn't tell her anything to avoid making her nervous and hides among the crowd while watching his girlfriend at her personal record. At the end of the race, Kotaru wants to visit her, but seeing her with her teammates changes his mind, and he decides to leave just as he came, proud of his beloved. However, Shinatsu discovers him but doesn't say anything either, as deep down she regrets that he didn't go to see her. Later, Hina asks Akane if she plans to keep running in high school, and she accidentally mentions the move. The boy tells her that he could give her a recommendation for the district's track club, but she says that nothing is confirmed yet. Hein then invites the track and field club to Kotaro's festival, and both he and Shinatsu acknowledge that he still hasn't gotten over Akane and Kotaru. Shinatsu asks Hina if she hasn't given up yet, but Hina tells her that she didn't even try, and that's what hurts the most. That night, Kotaru has a talk with his dad, who tells him that he doesn't need to rush into choosing a school, nor does he have to pick the best one. He should choose what makes him happiest. Later online, Kotaru confesses to Akane that he saw the athletics meet, and Akane tells him about the move. The drum festival is approaching, and Kotaru practices with determination, but his mind is elsewhere. On one hand, he just found out that Akane is probably moving, and on the other hand, he's still contemplating the idea of dedicating himself to writing light novels. Akane decides to enroll in a private school in Chiba that her parents recommended, and she leaves. She sees Kotaru studying and waiting to talk to her face to face. The protagonist meets up with Kotaru and apologizes, but he tells her it's not her fault that her family has to move. He also says he will try to enroll in the same school, and no matter what happens, they will be together more peacefully. The two head back home, and Kotaru reminds his girlfriend that his festival is coming up and he hopes to see her there. Later, the track club attends Kotaru's festival, where they see him perform. Even though the protagonist is wearing a mask, Akane recognizes his movements and is impressed by the show. During the break, Daisuke congratulates Kotaru and tells him that he should leave his novel as it is, because beyond the editor's opinion, it has potential and could attract its own audience. The group director tells them that they have time until the next performance so they can go enjoy the festival, which is why Kotaru goes looking for Akane. Later, Hina and Akane go separately to take out the trash. While they wait for Kotaru to arrive during the break, Hina confesses to Kane that she is in love with her, unaware that Kotaru is watching from a distance. Hina asks him why not him, since she's known him longer and they have more in common, but she replies that it's not what her heart wants. The boy accepts this, even though he's not happy about it. At least he tried. Overwhelmed by everything that's happening, Kotaru confronts Akane about everything she told Hina, confessing that he's jealous of the whole situation. Even though she tries to explain everything and tells him that Hina confessed to her and she rejected him, Kotaru remains frustrated and continues helping with the festival, which causes Akane to leave in tears. That night, both of them try to communicate with each other over the phone, but neither of them is able to send the first message, and they both go to sleep with broken hearts. The next day, they don't talk to each other, which makes them feel bad. Until in the library, Kotaru picks up the stuffed toy that she gave him and makes a decision. That night, Akane realizes that someone at Kotaru's school submitted an application for the middle school she plans to attend. The protagonist runs out and talks to her boyfriend face to face. Akane asks Kotaru about it, and he tells her that regardless of his future, he wants to be with her. He knows the complications that will come with entering the school, the effort it will require, and then there's the matter of talking to his parents, but he's more than willing to bear all that weight just to be with her. Akane, in tears, thanks him and gives him a kiss. Kotaru starts studying hard to get into Akane's school, even though he doesn't have the best grades, and the school is super prestigious. His parents are happy with his decision and decide to support him in his studies, even though the protagonist hasn't talked to them yet about which school he has decided to go to, because he knows it's going to be a problem. At first, his mother is thrilled because she used to criticize his hobbies as distractions, but during a meeting with his teacher, discovers that Kotaru doesn't plan to attend public school. The teacher mentions that it's the same school that Akane applied to, and Kotaru reveals his true intentions, which strains his relationship with his parents. That night, Kotaro argues with his mother, who realizes that the only reason he wants to go to a private school is because of a girl. The boy's father tries to cool down the situation so everyone can calm down and have a civilized conversation, but the argument escalates to the point where the boy ends up blaming his mother. Angry, the young man retreats to his room, and that night, Kotaro and Akane chat online. Although he's about to tell her that he argued with his parents, he changes his mind and tells her that everything is fine and that he's about to start studying. At night, besides studying, Akane starts knitting a scarf for Kotaro. Her sister Yame notices, and Akane tells her everything that happened. Her sister is very skeptical, as she doesn't believe that Kotaro will get into the private school or that a long-distance relationship can work. Yami asks, what would happen if they both end up at the same school and, by some twist of fate, their relationship ends, since it would be awkward to continue at the same school, especially considering that the only reason they're going there is because of her. Akane tells her that won't happen, that they'll never break up, but her sister is a bit worried. The next day, Kotaro continues taking night classes with the goal of improving his grades. He's still angry with his mother, even though she makes an effort to reach out and brings him dinner, which helps ease his anger a bit. In the end, the whole school finds out about his intentions, much to his embarrassment, as everyone thinks it's a big step in their relationship. Even though his friends congratulate him, they also know that getting into that prestigious school won't be easy, considering his grade. Kotaro's mother enters his room to clean a bit, and notices that her son is really putting in the effort to study. That night at school, Kotaro's grades improve, and he runs into Shinatsu, who tells him that he has decided to go to a public school. Later, Kotaro's mother meets with her own teacher, and they talk about his current academic status, as the teacher is very positive about the possibility of him getting into the school he wants. Our protagonist goes to the bookstore and talks to Daisuke, revealing that his grades have improved but they're still not good enough, and he might not be able to attend the school he wants. Daisuke asks how disappointed his parents will be, but the protagonist also reveals that they don't want him to go to that school, so his friend tells him to take a break, clear his head, and most importantly, to talk to his parents calmly. When he gets home, his mother tries to reach out to him, but the young man is too stubborn, so he heads to his room where he talks to Akane, and they both plan a Christmas get-together. Our protagonists manage to set up a date on Christmas Eve. Before attending, Kotaro stops by a mall to buy a gift for his girlfriend. The two meet up happily because it's been a while since they've done something just the two of them, and Akane gives Kotaro the scarf while the young man gifts her a handkerchief, which is a lucky choice because she thinks it's nice, since if there's a worse gift than a scarf, it would be a handkerchief. While they talk about grades, Kotaro mentions that he's not getting much support from his parents and tells her about the fight with his mother. She responds that it's really sad because parental support is very important in situations like this. In her case, her parents have given her all their support, which motivates her to keep going. Either way, support or not, they both have to pass the entrance exams, so they promise to give it their all. Sometime later, the exam results start coming in, and Kotaro along with Shinatsu find out that Akane has been accepted, which makes them quite happy. Shinatsu tells Kotaro that all that's left is to wait for his result, and when he gets accepted, he'll be able to go to school with his girlfriend, which also makes her happy. But when Kotaro leaves, it's clear that she's actually pretending, as she still has feelings for our protagonist. Kotaro returns home and talks to his father. The man tells him that he can try to go to the private school, but if he fails, he'll have to go to the public school, something the young man has no choice but to accept. His father also told him that his mother spoke with his tutor, who said that with his grades, Kotaro shouldn't even try to get into the private school, but his mother said she trusts her son's judgment, which she really shouldn't since his choice isn't well thought out, and everyone who disagrees is right in saying it's a mistake. It's pretty clear that Kotaro isn't thinking with his head, but with his heart. At night, our protagonist can't concentrate, so he goes down to the kitchen where his mother is preparing dinner for him. She also tells him that he should get to bed early for the exam tomorrow. The two have a little conversation, proof that things are getting better, and Kotaro enjoys some delicious onigiri. The next day before dawn, our protagonist gets ready to head out, and his proud parents wish him the best of luck on this exam, which is a big step for his life. After so many problems, our protagonist's efforts don't pay off, and in the end, he isn't accepted into the school that Akane is in, mostly because he tried to learn in 1 week what he should have learned over the whole year. But hey, he tried. He failed miserably, but he gave it a shot, which is a way of saying that love can conquer all. Later, they sit together and he tells his girlfriend the bad news, apologizing for not being good enough. Akane, even though she's also sad, tells him that she knows how hard he tried, which isn't a huge comfort, but it's something, just like his father promised. Kotaro tells his father that he will go to the public school. Later at the bookstore, Daisuke suggests that she use her experiences to write because everything can be used to tell a good story. Meanwhile, Ayan suggests to Kane that she should break up with Kotaro since long-distance relationships tend to be a problem and it would probably be best for both of them. However, our protagonist refuses to listen to any negativity. Finally, Kotaro and Shinatsu are accepted into the same school. On the way home, Shinatsu asks Kotaro what will happen with Akane since they'll be in different schools. Kotaro says that everything will probably stay the same and that he doesn't expect to have any problems in his relationship. This doesn't sit well with Shinatsu as she was hoping fate would play in her favor, but seeing that things don't just happen on their own, she decides to confess once and for all, telling him that she loves him and hugging him in the middle of the street. Kotaro, surprised, doesn't return the hug and can only apologize. Shinatsu understands and tells her that she's happy to have gotten that weight off her shoulders, smiling as she says they'll see each other in class soon, which surely won't be awkward for anyone. In class, she receives a message from Shinatsu telling her that she confessed to Kotaro but he rejected her. Shinatsu asks our protagonist if they can still be friends after that, and she replies that they can. At night, Kotaro, with a new attitude, dedicates himself to continuing to write his novels, something he had set aside when he started dating. But now he's going to have more time since he's about to be alone. Well, not really. Classes end and the students say their goodbyes. Some are happy, others are sad, but everyone is ready for what's coming next. Akane says goodbye to Hina, who asks her if she will keep running, and she replies that she will. Hina then tells her that it's just a matter of time before they see each other again on the track. After graduating, at Roman's suggestion, Kotaro starts self-publishing online. Akane and he go out for a walk and make plans for a long-distance relationship. Kotaro promises to make an effort to see her more than anything else, to get a job, to travel whenever he can, to go watch her at her sports events, the usual stuff. However, she interrupts him because she has something very important to tell him. Akane asks him if it's true that Shinazu confessed to him, and he confirms it. She tells him that he should have told her, and he replies that he didn't want to worry her, which makes her break down in tears, letting out all the pent-up feelings. Akane admits that her anxiety makes her feel like she's just bothering Kotaro, and after kissing him, she leaves in tears, completely heartbroken. That night, Kotaro tries to send her a message online, but he doesn't know what to say since he knows that this time it's all his fault. Weeks later, Akane's family starts to move, and as she says goodbye to Shinatsu and Aoi, her parents allow her to take one last trip. Meanwhile, Kotaro is at home playing with his doll in distress while his father is doing something to help him, but we don't see what it is. Shinatsu shows Kan the published story by Kotaro, which is about her and the story of how he met her and fell in love. Kotaro feels guilty. He finishes publishing his story online, and later, overwhelmed with his festival work, he can't say goodbye to her. Daisuke shows him that his story has become very popular, and Kotaro realizes that among the comments, Akane has mentioned what will happen next. At the station, Akane takes the last train and says goodbye to her friends. She doesn't make it in time, tries to send him a message online, but realizes that what she wants to tell him needs to be said in person, so she keeps running. When she arrives at the station, she's already gone, and instead he replies in the comments and shouts from a bridge as her train passes by that he loves her. However, she, caught up in the last chapter of her novel, can't hear him and moves away from him in tears. As the train leaves, Kotaro reflects on his relationship with first love. An awkward romance, the first kiss, a bunch of mistakes someone makes when they're not prepared. Kotaro always doubted his future, but by shouting it to the four winds, he now knows what fate has in store for him. Time goes by, and the couple manages to make their long-distance relationship work. Over the next few years, Kotaro and Akane remain together and embark on new experiences. They go to the same university, move into an apartment when they become adults, and eventually get married and have a child. Throughout all this time, they maintain their special connection by sending each other messages online as a constant reminder of the love and commitment they built since their days at Yusen High School.